All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to How to Build a Team of A Players, the latest in the HRAI YouTube webinar series. Today we have Caitlin Blundell, a business coach with Action Coach. Now, Action Coach is a firm that's been around since the early 90s. It's the world's largest business coaching network of its kind, with thousands of business coaches across the globe, operating in over 80 countries, coaching hundreds of thousands of small businesses every week. And they are taking time away from all that to speak with HRAI members today. Specifically, we have Caitlin, who is based in Mississauga, who is a certified action coach and an award-winning business coach herself. And without further ado, let's say hello. Hi, Caitlin.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So, I mean, team development, recruitment, it's a huge issue for HRAI and all industry right now. So, this is going to be some really good insights. And with that,
Perfect.
I will leave it to you.
All right. So at the moment, I can see you. I cannot see our other participants. Do they have a way to to come on screen or put up a hand or interact in any way?
Thank you. So they can put their questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. So no, we can't see them or hear them,
Okay.
but they can communicate via chat or Q&A, and I'll be watching those throughout the webinar to bring attention.
All right. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. Thanks for being here live or for watching the recording. A mentor once told me that you can choose to spend your time or invest it because, as we all know, busyness is not the same thing as productivity, right? So I thank you for investing an hour with me today to work on your business. My name's Caitlin. Just like a sport coach, I work with business owners to set their goals, define the strategies and tactics, and then execute the plan. I took a pretty unconventional path into this industry in that I actually studied urban planning at school. But what I quickly realized is that without healthy small businesses, none of the rest of that stuff actually matters. Great local businesses have this ripple effect. A healthy business creates a great life for the owner, right? Who can create more and more great jobs. And that impacts their employees and their families. And that lets them have a huge impact on their customers and by extension on their cities and on their communities. So my job and my passion is to help and support businesses so they can do more of what they do best with less headaches, less heartaches, and more time with their families and with their hobbies. So now that you know a little bit more about who I am and what I do, what I'd like to ask is that I can have your permission to be your coach for the next hour. And I know some of you may have worked for the coach in the past. Many of you probably haven't and may find that a little awkward or uncomfortable. So let me tell you a little bit about what it's like to work with a coach, okay? And I can tell you that for every session, I do have one rule, and that's that we've got to have some fun. One of the things that I truly believe is that being in business should give you more life, not suck the life out of you. Okay, so we always try and work in some fun. I have four goals for our time together over the next hour. So I'll share those with you. The first is that, of course, I want to educate you. I want to give you some tools to help you build an amazing business. I'm not here to motivate you. Motivation alone is kind of useless, right? If you motivate an idiot, they're just going to do dumb stuff faster. So I want to take this time to educate you and really make this a training ground. I want to coach you. It's what I do. So we're going to dig in. And I want this to be a conversation. So if you do have questions, comments, thoughts you want to share with the group, please fire away. That's what the chat box is for. That's what the Q&A is for. I'm going to try to answer them as we go, and I'll be available afterwards for any one-on-one conversations as well. Third thing is I want you to walk out with some ideas that you can use right away. Okay, I'm an action coach, not a think about it coach, not a seminar coach. So I want to give you some actions that you can take away. And the fourth thing is I want to help you decide what level of coaching your business might need. Because sure, you know, you can DIY it, you can do it the hard way, but there is an established path to business growth. And since I started my first business at the age of, I think, 22, I've been on a journey of training and education to learn everything I can about how to help you build a successful business. And I define that as a profitable business that works even when you're not around, because that's the kind of business that you can sell, you can pass down to the next generation, or you can scale up. And I can tell you that in my first business, everything depended on me. And guess what happened when the hamster stopped running, right? But there is a better way, right? This is something I had to learn. And I'm going to share a couple of key ideas today about recruiting and retaining a great team. But then, of course, I can help you implement these things through coaching and also with team training programs. What I always ask is, if you knew you could invest $10,000 to $30,000 and have it come back as a 30 to 60% growth in your business over the next 12 months, don't you think that would be worth investing in? So if it's okay with you guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a bunch of info today that you can use with or without me. Okay. And then at the very end, I'll show you a way to fast track the results for those of you who are ready for it. And we don't have a lot of time today. The clock is ticking. So I'm going to move fast. I'm going to talk fast. I'm going to have to ask you to think fast. But I want to start with the number one thing that will make everything else I talk about today either easier or unnecessary. And that's the idea of the point of power. This is your attitude toward your business in the day-to-day and as a whole. And what it represents is different levels of empowerment. Okay, how much power and agency you are giving yourself to make the changes that you know you want to make. Below the point of power, you are a victim of your circumstances. It is really, really hard to make changes from here. Down at the bottom is the level of being in denial. It's okay, everything's fine. Meanwhile, maybe you're getting, slammed on Google for bad customer service, or you're losing your best team members to the competition. Until you face those challenges head on, you can't resolve them. Next comes excuses. This is when there are all of these big external factors that are beyond your control. It's the economy, it's the government, it's the weather. You're powerless to do anything because everything is coming from this big thing that you can't change. And then we've got blame, right? And that's when something goes wrong, and it's because maybe you work with idiots. Maybe it's because the competition is undercutting you, or your customers kind of suck, right? So it's pretty easy to slip below the point into blame, but it rarely serves you or the business when that happens. So we want to stay above the point. And above the point, we accept that business is a mirror reflecting your strengths and your weaknesses. So this is when you take control of the situation and give yourself the power to change it, taking responsibility for successes and failures, holding yourself and your team to account for meeting goals, for following the plan. And that level of ownership right up at the top, that means recognizing that no matter what happens, you're steering the ship. Whatever comes your way, you have what it takes to adapt. You don't necessarily have all the answers, but you are navigating as well as you can. So what happens if you yourself as a leader or owner in your organization fall below the point of power, blaming your team or your customers for the problems, making excuses for missing meetings or not meeting your own commitments, or even being in denial about any of the issues that you may be facing? That behavior trickles down. It trickles down to everyone working around you. Put in industry-specific terms, we can say that the owners and the leaders act as the thermostat. They set the temperature for everyone else. And if the temperature is high, you can't fix it by getting a new thermometer. This is what John Maxwell called the law of the lid. It's the idea that no matter what, your business can never outperform you. Your team can never outperform you. It's a lot of pressure on the business owner. But this is also why you can't necessarily recruit your way out of any challenges that you are facing. Sure, of course, when we're recruiting, we want to bring in the best possible person, but you also want to give them the best opportunity to stick around and to succeed in their role. And somebody did a study fairly recently about this, and they didn't actually study employees, but they did study chimpanzees. And they looked at two different groups of chimps. And each group had some nuts to crack, and they did it in different ways. And one group learned a new nut cracking technique. Woo! Sorry about that. Each group learned one group learned a new nut cracking technique. Okay. The new technique was faster, it was more effective, it was better. And one chimp from that group was actually put in with the second group, and it quickly reverted back to the old way of cracking nuts. And that's the group dynamic at play, right? Even when we know better, just like those chimps, we'd rather be wrong with the crowd than right by ourselves. The norms of the group a new recruit is joining are a powerful force. And that's why you can't rely on a great new hire to come in and to change an established dynamic. It's more likely that that superstar will revert and become more like the group. So culture matters, right? We're talking about that set of values, beliefs, behaviors, and ways of working shared by members of your group. And I'm not trying to say that your culture is necessarily lousy, okay? But the fact is, the better your current culture is, the easier it's going to be to recruit and retain amazing new employees. The grass is always greener where you water it. So I want to start by talking about your business as it is today, and then I'll move on and talk about hiring and recruiting later on in the hour. Okay, does that sound all right with me so far? Okay. I want to jump in. This is a quick overview of the steps that I follow to help my coaching clients build a successful business. And I want to just highlight each step today so you can see where team is in the process and think about how to shore up any weak areas or gaps to make this easier for yourself. Following the steps at the bottom will help you build a strong foundation to support your growth in the future. So at the bottom of this ladder, there is a level of business mastery, right? Because we know that without core business fundamentals, as the business grows, as the team goes, you might find yourself running around, putting out fires or feeling like the business is running you rather than you running the business. So the goal at this step is to eliminate the chaos in the business. And we do that in 4 ways. The first way is by establishing money mastery. So how well do you understand how money moves through the business? Do you have financial tracking systems in place? Do you know your numbers? Okay, you can't grow what you don't know. Then there's time mastery. If your team isn't productive, maybe there's something we can do, some work we can do to help you get more done or get better results by helping them manage their time, set priorities, and focus. The third element here is delivery mastery. That's your customer service. Does every customer get a consistent level and quality of service? Does the team work well together? Are the customer's problems getting solved? And the fourth element here is destination. Destination mastery means everyone is pulling in the same direction, that there are clear goals and a clear vision for the future. Okay, so there's the 4 elements of business mastery to set a strong foundation for everything else that comes next. The next level up from mastery is what I call niche. We can call this marketing. These are profit generating activities, things that grow your bottom line. So we're talking about obviously lead generation marketing. We're talking about things like having a reliable sales process and a system for following up on open leads, a strategy to cross-sell or upgrade your customers, a strategy to pursue repeat and referral business, and of course, doing all of this with an eye on your margins. This is really the number side of the business, which is equally as important as the people side. If this is of interest to you, then I hope you'll come back on July 4th for my next webinar for HRAI, because that's where we're really going to be diving into the profit generating activities. The third level is leverage. And here's where we get to work on your systems and your processes. So your team know exactly what they should be doing and when, and what's considered to be a success. So we're talking about things like your standard operating procedures, your key performance indicators, even your management systems, like holding regular performance evaluations, for example. And finally, recruiting and team building comes in at step 4. This is, now we've got the systems in place and we can start structuring the team for future growth. It's not just about hiring people, right? It's about hiring, recruiting the right people who are going to grow the business and make it work even when you're not there, right? Because if the systems are already working well, then the people need to just run the systems. And that reduces burnout and stress and mistakes. The couple of steps at the top here are a little bit outside our scope for today. This is more about what happens when you've got that successful business in one location and you can start thinking about multiplying it or going into new markets or new territories. That might be fodder for another day. But I want you to kind of reflect, where do you see the first opportunity for yourself? knowing what you know about your business today, can you see at those levels, are there some gaps to fill in, or maybe some work to be done, or a new level of understanding that could be gained? So this isn't to say that you can't hire until you have perfect systems, or hit a certain level of profit, or follow a bulletproof time management system. I don't know anyone who's built a business in that way. What I'm trying to say is that if there are significant gaps, okay, in customer service, in ensuring profitability, in planning and time management, then let's make sure we're tackling the lowest rung on the ladder before adding growth and complexity at the top. Does that make sense? You guys see some opportunities in here for some work to be done on your business? Feel free to kind of just throw some comments in the chat for me so I can see if you're following along. I know that we're here. Oh,
Oh,
sorry. Go
there we
ahead.
go. We've
Yeah.
got some yeses. And just a reminder, yeah, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the chat button. You'll see the Q&A. So please feel free to interact at any time with Caitlin as she goes through this.
Yes, thank you. It's a lot more fun for me when people chime in. Okay, so we're all here because we're all interested in having a team of A players, but what does that mean? How would you define an A player? Again, go hit that chat. What is your idea of an A player? What are the characteristics and attributes and skills that make an A player in your business? Because of course, it's going to be different in every business, even in the same industry. Somebody internally motivated. Yes, I love that. That level of motivation, the kind of the people who are on your team who are hitting the gas instead of hitting the brake. I can certainly share some things that I've come up with here. Maybe these resonate with you. First, I guess, and most obvious is we're looking for a high performer. This is somebody who takes real pride in doing work to a high standard, right? Who has the skills to do the job well.
We actually have a comment from Christy. And you can, I don't know if Caitlin, you can see on your,
Yeah,
can you see the chat
yeah.
function? Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
can see it.
there we go. Someone internally motivated is
I love
her
that.
definition of an A
Great
player.
answer. The second thing is a values fit. And let me ask you, have you ever worked with somebody who is technically pretty talented? They are undeniably good at the part of the job that has nothing to do with people, but no one wants to work with them because they're rude, they're abrasive, or they're weirdly competitive, right? What happens with that person? Maybe people start refusing to work with them, or you start avoiding managing them, or you start only sending them on the easy jobs that you know they're not going to cause any problems. So the fact is that person might have skills, but they're not an A player. They are a C at best, because what they're doing is they're actually repelling A players. Compensation is a consideration here, right? Sometimes you find an A player who is going to demand 10 or 20% more on salary than anybody else you can find. And in exchange, they'll produce 20 to 50% more. So is it worth it to pay more for significantly better results? Oftentimes, yeah, it definitely is. But no matter what's available for compensation, or if you're working in an industry where compensation is set at that, for example, the union level, and you don't have a lot of wiggle room there, we can still define an A player as somebody who's in the top 10% of candidates for whatever pay range you are offering. Okay, so you can have an A performer in an entry-level role relative to others who are sitting at that pay band. And if you're consistently working with the top 10% of candidates in your pay range for every position in your company, you're working with rocket fuel. As Kirsty pointed out, A players are resourceful. They have great attitudes. They're proactive. They solve problems, or they even prevent problems by finding and suggesting solutions in advance. And A players on your team have a ripple effect. They have this energy that energizes others in a way that is really hard to measure, but absolutely exists. They help the existing team members work at a higher level, and they help when you're recruiting, because A's naturally want to work with other A's. So what do these A employees expect from the companies that they work with? We know they're ambitious, right? We know they want to succeed, and they want to be surrounded by other A players. So that means we need a common understanding. We need clarity about each role. This is kind of a written summary of what everyone is responsible for. And that kind of clarity is most often expressed in a job description. And what often happens with companies, especially companies that have been around for a while, is if people come in and over time, they take on the things they're good at. So the role changes over time, and you don't really have these designated swim lanes anymore. But everybody should know the 3 to 5 priorities they're responsible for, the specific tasks that fall into those buckets, and how you want them to allocate their time. So if your expectations aren't clear, or they're not sure how you're measuring their success in the role, or if things are often kind of falling between the cracks, getting those clear job descriptions down on paper can be a really important tool for getting back on track. So let me back one step here, because I also want to mention that role clarity means agreeing ahead of time on what success looks like for a project or for a specific time period. So this is the difference between like starting out with a map versus starting by like going a couple of kilometers and then asking if you're on the right track, right? We want to start out with a plan and give them those clear kind of mile markers for what we expect throughout the duration of a period of time or a project. We want to play chess, not checkers. If you think about it, in checkers, every piece moves the same way. In chess, every piece is different and moves in a different way. You can't ignore the uniqueness of each piece. So in order to appreciate the different moves that all of your different team members can execute, you need to know more about them than their job description, right? You need to kind of understand them as a person. They might have different communication preferences from you. They might signal for help differently than you do, and they might offer suggestions or solutions differently than you do. So recognizing those kind of habits and behaviors, the unique kind of personalities of the people on your team, helps you really play to their individual strengths. And finally, performance management. This is like consistent, predictable, positive feedback about the tasks on the job, as well as their behavior, their habits, their personalities, all of those things that help them succeed. The reality is A players don't want to tolerate a B manager. They demand an A level manager. They have goals, their growth path matters to them, and they want to make sure they're on the right track. Okay? And I like to focus on positive performance management in particular, because praise is more motivating than criticism. I'm sure you can think of moments in your own life, personal or business, where this has been true for you, that if somebody says something encouraging, you're motivated to want to do more of it. Whereas if you're hitting a constant kind of stream of criticism, you tend to kind of shut down or not want to keep going, not want to keep trying. Positive performance management also asks you to pay attention to your strongest performers, not ignore them because they're okay and you're busy with the ones who might be struggling a little bit more. Okay, so making sure we pay attention to those strong performers as well as the ones who are struggling. I see we have a question in the Q&A. These are great questions. Okay.
We have a couple.
Yeah, and I'm looking at them, and they're awesome questions, but I think I'm going to take them at the end when we have a little bit more time.
Right.
Does that suit the question askers? Is that okay? Keep them coming, keep the questions coming, but I don't want to divert too far into some of those other issues. And I think that the next couple of slides will help to start answering them in any case. So A players also expect what is currently being called psychological safety. I'm not sure if this is a term that's familiar to you, that you've heard before, but what it basically means is it's a measure of how safe somebody feels at work to take risks and express themselves. Can they be vulnerable? Can they be authentic with each other? Can they ask questions? Can they put forward ideas? Okay, so when I say it's taking risks, it's kind of psychological risks or emotional risks or being vulnerable, rather than technical safety issue risks, which of course we don't. We want to avoid those. When team members feel safe, what happens is they're more likely to ask for help. They're more likely to admit to making a mistake. They're more likely to try new things because they know the team has their back. And when they're doing this stuff, when they're asking for help, when they're trying new things, when they're talking about their mistakes openly, that's learning, right? They're learning, they're becoming more and more effective. So psychological safety increases how quickly a team learns and adapts, and that increases team performance across the board. What this doesn't mean is that everyone is best friends, there are never any disagreements. It's kind of the opposite. It's that it's safe for disagreements to happen because the culture is such that you can work through them productively. So how do we create psychological safety? The first element is trust. NA players, they expect your trust. That means at least some freedom and flexibility within what's reasonable to get the job done. Obviously, not everyone can set their own hours and work from home, but feeling trusted and feeling respected is really, really important to those A players. And the numbers back this up. The employees who felt respected, who felt trusted, reported 89% higher satisfaction with their work and 92% greater focus. Okay, 89% higher satisfaction, 92% greater focus. As a leader, trust is one of the single most impactful things you can do for your team, because the opposite is true as well. We can say that among those who felt they had been disrespected by the owner of the company or the leader of their team, about half said they intentionally decreased their effort. And almost 80% said their commitment to their employer declined. And this is especially true of high performers. High performers who receive disrespect from too many people in an organization are 13 times more likely to quit than the low or average performers in the same culture. So you imagine that effect on organizational performance, right? On the nature of your team, on the makeup of your team. So what does that mean, right? How can you create trust? Keeping in mind, the law of the lid, your company can never outperform you. This starts at the leadership level. Someone has to go first, maybe by admitting a mistake or asking for help and stopping to listen. We know that having friends at work makes people more productive, more engaged, more resilient. There's actually a really interesting fact. Fire stations that share meals together on a regular basis actually perform better when it comes to fighting fires, right? Because they've got that connection, they understand each other, they've got better empathy. So this can start with showing appreciation, expressing gratitude for the people on your team who are going above and beyond, or who are performing at a high level. And there are lots of great examples of the kind of the magic culturally that happens when teams are encouraged and set up to appreciate and recognize one another for their contributions. So that comes from the leadership team down, and it comes from peer to peer, right? We can have that appreciation and that gratitude on every level. And shared rituals are also another powerful way to create a sense of belonging. That could be something small, like a way to kick off a meeting that you're having anyway. It can be something big, like a kind of a ceremony, a shared ceremony around something like a promotion. And these could be connected to things you're doing already that you might not think of as a ritual, things like a team barbecue or a team golf day. And I want to share one real world example with you about why this idea of psychological safety is so important. And this is a study that came out of a hospital looking at the different teams of nurses. So there were different nursing teams, each of them led by a charge nurse. And some teams were performing at a much higher level than others, right? On factors ranging from patient outcomes to employee engagement. So they wanted to figure out what was going on in the high performing teams. What were those charge nurses doing differently from everybody else? In the course of their research, they found something really odd, which is that the higher quality teams had a higher rate of documented errors than the others. So the good leadership from the best charge nurses actually seemed to be making performance worse. Weird, right? So they dug into it and they figured it out. It wasn't that those teams were making more mistakes. It was just that they were getting documented at a higher rate. They were getting documented more often, getting caught more often. And what we know from this is that those leaders, the best leaders, created an environment where people felt safe to admit that they'd made a mistake, rather than trying to hide it or cover it up. And because of that psychological safety, the whole team was learning from every misstep, and performance increased across the board, leading to those better results. And I would like to talk about shared goals. A players do expect, like, they're ambitious. They want to meet those targets. They want to smash them. They want to knock that goal out of the water. So, do they know where you're trying to go? What are your goals for this quarter? Do you know? Do you know what your goals are for this quarter? Do you know what your goals are for the rest of the year? Because if you don't know them, then how will the team? How will they know how they can help achieve them? How do they know and trust that their contribution will be celebrated? So an A player really values having this vision that they connect with that goes beyond, what's the number on the paycheck. Of course, they want to be compensated fairly, but they also want to work in a way or work on something that they feel is purposeful. It's having an impact. They can get behind it and they find it motivating. So the goals that motivate your A players, well, let's face it, they might not be paying off the owner's mortgage, right? That's not probably universally motivating, but they could have other targets. It could be something like earning as a team a certain number of 5-star reviews in a month. It could be achieving a certain number of referrals from your current customers. It could be serving or impacting a target number of customers, or any number of other targets that demonstrate the impact that you're having. Because when you communicate a strong vision for where the company is going, where it's going in future, and the specific goals or targets that you lay out, because you know that if you hit those things, you're confident that you're on the right track. It's like navigating with a GPS, right? You've got a destination, you know where you are today, and you can see exactly what path to take. Sharing goals also brings the whole organization into alignment, because when we do stop to write them down, we often call them inconsistencies. Maybe there's a goal of no overtime, along with a goal for a certain, minimum response time. Those are both great targets, but you might not, they're kind of in opposition to one another, right? A lot of the time. So they need to be balanced and prioritized. Several years ago, Inc. magazine asked senior leaders in 600 different companies to guess how many of their employees knew the top priorities of the organization. Okay? How many of your employees know your goals, let alone know how they can help, to help achieve them? Do they know where you want to go? And the average senior leader guessed that 64% of their team would be able to name their top 3 priorities. Okay, and when Inc. followed up, they found reality, only 2% of the employees could accurately name their leaders' priorities. So how do you feel purposeful? Right? How do you feel progress and motivation if you don't know where you're going? Okay. And that study was a few years ago, but I don't think very much has changed. Do you see how having these clear goals and targets that everybody shares and everybody knows about, they can help you reach your destination faster, right? All right, so I want to take 1 minute to watch a video. This one's been on YouTube for a while. You might have seen it already, but I want you to watch it and think about some of these bullet points that we've discussed about what A players look for, because this is inarguably, definitely a team of A players doing a Ferrari F1 pit stop. All right, so take a minute, watch the video, and then let's talk about what we see. Pretty cool, eh? So in the chat, what do you see from this team in operation? What makes this so impressive as a team effort? What did you notice? Cohesion. Yeah, working together. How great the flow is. Nice. So what creates that cohesion? What creates that flow? Everyone knows their role. Yeah, thank you, Victor. That's exactly it. Everybody knows exactly what element of this pit stop they're responsible for. Everybody has a purpose. Everybody knows not only their role, but everybody else's role. And they trust, right? They trust their teammates to get it done. What about goals? What can we see about their are they kind of pulling in different directions, trying to accomplish different things? No, of course, they have one purpose, right? They're all aware of one result. Yes, Musama, thank you. They have one shared goal, one driving purpose. They all want to get that car out of there in however many seconds that was. And I'll add one more thing that I'm not sure whether you noticed. I'm not sure. I don't think I noticed it the very first time I watched this video, but there is a moment. Let's go back. Won't let me go. All right. The controls are not working the way I want them to. Oh, here we go. So watch this side. You see it? You have somebody who is 100% focused on their part of this puzzle, their role on the team, and yet they took the time to notice that there was some debris. I don't know if that was a leaf or like some little thing that was in the path, and carefully kind of picked it up and cleared it away. So you can see that this team of 8 players, they care. They are intrinsically motivated, as Christy put it earlier. They care enough to sweat the small stuff. And this is really interesting, right? Because as leaders of a company, quite often people come to me and say, I want to find a way to motivate my team. And the reality is you can't really motivate people who don't care, but you can find people who are motivated by what you do. Okay, who buy into your vision, who buy into your purpose, who buy into the type of culture that you want to create. If you can find the people who are motivated by the things you're doing, then they will stay motivated and they will sweat the small stuff just like that guy did. All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk about recruiting. I know too often this is an afterthought because, well, maybe you just need somebody. You need somebody like yesterday, right? We've got to hire fast. Or maybe you've got somebody who's in your immediate network who's looking for a job. And so you know them, you like them, so you hire them without necessarily thinking about how they'll fit in or getting really clear on that job description, right? That role clarity that we talked about earlier. The problem is wrong hires can be really expensive. You might have experienced this, right? If you hire somebody on and it turns out they're not the right fit, what happens? They probably need a lot more training. They need more oversight. They need ongoing management at a level that maybe drains your time and your energy. They might leave quickly, which leaves you with another staffing crisis to resolve, or even worse, they might stay, right? Demoralizing your team in the long run. Now you're stuck with them. So I want to talk through some common barriers to success. Okay, see if you can identify any of these traps that you might have seen your organization or other organizations fall into. The number one barrier to successfully recruiting the right person is having an unclear target. This is when you're just not really clear about what kind of person you need. Maybe you know the technical skill set that you want them to bring with them, but you're not really have not really met and thought about the particular kind of characteristics or attributes or all of that other stuff that's going to help make them successful. Maybe you hire with the intention of solving the current biggest headache or to backfill for somebody who's moved on, but you do it without first asking, okay, but what does this role actually exist to do? What are the objectives? What are the deliverables? What separates an A performer in this role from a B or a C? And this leads into the next thing, which is a generic job ad. And one of the huge mistakes is when a company does market research, right, to see what other companies are posting for a similar role. And then they take bits and pieces of those ads and smashes them all together into one pretty bland job posting. And this is my analogy. It's like, if this were an ad for a car, would you come in for a test drive? Okay. Our car has 4 wheels, an engine. It's exciting to be in. We're the best car company. You are responsible for pushing all pedals, steering, and music selection. Trust us, you'll love this car. Did we mention it's exciting? It's yours for $50,000. I can tell you I would not be coming in for a test drive, right? It doesn't make sense. But somehow, so many recruiting ads sound pretty much like that, only with more words, right? So we want to get specific in the job ad, the real kind of competency, skills, and motivations that are required for a great, effective job ad. Here we are back again. I talked earlier about the importance of role clarity, and this is really especially key in the hiring process because it not only tells you what they're going to do, but how you're going to measure their performance. And this lets you run a way better job interview. Okay, this lets you ask better questions and gives you a new level of understanding that helps you evaluate and rank the answers to the questions that you ask. And finally, it's pretty easy to hire on skill alone. But if they have a bad attitude, if they're not motivated, if they have, if they're not a values fit, then they can become one of those, what we call the talented terrors, the people who are technically good, but everyone avoids them. It's much easier in a recruiting process to measure skill, whether that's kind of technical competence in the field or Microsoft Office, on the admin side. But it's so important to check out character and attitude before committing to hiring somebody. Yes, of course, take a skilled person over an unskilled person if all else is equal. But attitude is critical, and it's much harder to assess. So you do need to kind of plan in advance for how you're going to do that. I thought this was a really interesting study. They studied 20,000 new hires. So that's pretty good sample size, pretty good amount of data. Of these 20,000 hires, within 18 months, 46% of them were either fired, they received poor performance reviews, or they were written up. So why was that? What happened that took somebody who was the best candidate at the interview stage and 46% of them were underperforming? Let's see the reasons why. Okay. 26% of them failed on this kind of coachability. Maybe they couldn't take direction. They didn't ask for help. They maybe had a kind of a know-it-all attitude or a chip on their shoulder. 23% had feedback that they had kind of not great emotional intelligence. They didn't know how to read the room. Maybe didn't have empathy for their colleagues or coworkers. 17% of them lacked motivation. They wouldn't put in the extra effort. They, did the baseline minimum of what was necessary for the job, and no more than that. 15% of them had issues with temperament. Maybe they were often angry, or some other kind of maybe often abrasive or rude, or had some kind of a personality that was very difficult to get along with. So that's a total of 89%. 89% of those who had poor performance reviews or got fired or got written up, it came down to a bad attitude an attitude deficiency, that attitude that did not meet the team's standards. And of course, 11% had issues with technical competence. So when we run interviews, when we run recruiting, and we focus 90% of our effort on finding somebody who is technically competent and consider attitude to be a nice to have, it's really, really cutting ourselves off at the knees, right? It's really hurting our future chances for success, because we know that technical competence is 11% of the trouble down the road. 89% of the trouble down the road is going to come from attitude. And there is a level of clarity that you can bring to a recruiting process that will really serve you as you assess your candidates and run your interviews. Because the attitudes that work for your organization are unique. Your A players are somebody else's B players. As an example of this, I had 2 clients hiring recently. And we were going through this exercise about, okay, what's specific to your organization? What do you value? What are the characteristics and attributes of the person you need to bring in? And both said professionalism. They've got to be really professional. That sounds great, right? So maybe they're looking for the same person. But we start digging a little bit deeper, and we found that to one of them, professionalism meant, answering the phone before the 3rd ring. And to the other, professionalism really meant like never wearing sandals to work. Okay, so getting really clear and really specific on what will work for you, beyond the kind of the vague level of, well, we want to be professional, we want them to be, friendly, we want them to be whatever. Getting really clear about what that means to you and what specifically will work in your organization will really, really serve you in this process. And that's backed up even further. This is yet another study. Companies that do this work, right, that to really clearly think about our culture, our values, what works for us, what makes us special and unique. It does a few things. It differentiates your company and your culture from everybody else around you hiring for a similar role, which lets you get really, really focused on finding the right people. And it makes you more attractive, because when you find that right person, they're able to see, yes, I am so excited to work with you. I am so excited to be a part of your team, because what you value is so much aligned with what I value. Okay? So companies that differentiate themselves and their cultures were able to hire their first choice candidate 24% more often, because those candidates were excited to work with those companies. So the characteristics, the skills, the things you want to put in your job ad are the things that make your culture distinct, right? Not this bland and generic description that makes you sound the same as everyone else. And I will say, a lot of recruiters out there think that if they're bland and generic and inoffensive enough, then everyone will want to work for them. Reality is, it doesn't matter how many people apply for your job. The only thing that matters is that the right people apply. They make the initial cut, they accept your offer, and they turn into high performers. In fact, isn't it better if fewer people apply and none of them suck, right? Like if we actively repel those candidates that aren't a culture fit for you, that aren't a values fit for you, then you've got a smaller pool of candidates to assess. It takes less time, and you're able to make a better judgment more often. This all comes back to that point of power, having full belief that you are navigating your ship so that you can adapt to these changes in the job market, the economy, everything else that comes your way this summer. Jim Rohn said it best: never wish that it were easier, wish that you were better. So that's what I want to leave you with. And I want to say the time is now for action. And I know some of you came for information. And I hope you got it. I hope you took away some tips and ideas, and maybe a gold nugget or 2 that you can use right away. And if that's you, if you wanted a few ideas, you don't really want to talk about coaching, you're not interested, that is fine. I run these sessions for ORAC and for HRAI to help business owners. So if that's you, and if you did get value out of this, then the highest compliment you could pay me would be to just drop a 5-star review on Google, sharing the value you got from our time today. That might really help another business owner in the future decide if this is a good fit for them. But if you're sitting there thinking, oh, that's great information, but now I need to execute, right? You realize it's not just what you know, it's what you do with what you know. If that's you, then what I'd like to do is I'd like to offer a free coaching session. Um, this is a way for us to kind of assess, is coaching with me a good fit for you? I don't know yet, you don't know yet. So if you're curious about it, the first one's on me. I have a link that I'll put in the chat and I'll share for distribution, quick and easy sign up, and we'll just kind of work through the process to see if it makes sense to work together. Absolutely no obligations, no strings attached, just an exploration.
Thank you.
Uh,
And we'll certainly share that after the fact as well with the registrants of this webinar.
Fabulous. All right. Well,
Yep.
thank you so much. And I know we've got some questions in the Q&A, so let's turn to those.
Sure. I can, I'll read them out to you and you do your thing.
Okay.
How do you convince a culture-based company that it's important to have team meetings, share tasks, information to all designated parties who are involved, even the female colleagues?
A culture-based organization. I'm not sure what that means. I think that all organizations have a culture, right?
Right, right. So let's maybe if the question asker can kind of expand on that question while we're answering the other one, that'd be great.
It sounds like the idea is that they maybe are having some trouble kickstarting a management system and getting buy-in, right?
Mhm.
Getting 100% participation from everybody to participate in whatever meetings they've got going. So there's a couple of ways to go about it, and I'd probably want to talk in a little bit more detail before I give you kind of specific action steps.
Oh, there
Um,
is a clarifying point. One majority culture or religion. So I guess culture in that step. Yeah. So it's
okay,
a very culturally dominated company.
okay.
Mm.
Um, I think I mean, I coach companies from a variety of industries, a variety of cultures. The fundamental kind of human nature doesn't change. And here's the thing: when you're making a big change, you've got three tools in your tool belt. The first is a level of dissatisfaction, right? How frustrated, annoyed, upset are people with the current situation? And if they're not dissatisfied, if they're fine, if they're getting by, then it's hard to make change. It's hard to get motivated. The second is a level of vision. Like, do they understand how, when you make a change, what's going to be better? What's going to be different having made the change? How is it going to benefit them? What's in it for me? So we need both, right? It's like the carrot and the stick. We need a little bit of dissatisfaction and a little bit of vision to kick us into action and make a change. And if you can identify which of those levers kind of has the most opportunity for you, then you can start to increase dissatisfaction by increasing friction, making it harder to sit out, making it harder to not participate. And you can increase vision by kind of sharing the specific outcomes that you're trying to achieve, right? To get people on board with the end goal that you have in mind. The third tool that you have in your tool belt is kind of breaking it down into manageable steps. Whenever you try and make a big change, our natural kind of human level of resistance tends to spike up. This is why New Year's resolutions almost always fail, right? Because we wake up on January 1st and go, okay, from now on, I'm vegetarian or vegan. I'm drinking 60 ounces of water a day. I'm exercising 7 days a week. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. And then it's hard. It's too much. It's like trying to take the first mile instead of taking the first step. So is there a way to break it down into a smaller, more realistic step that you can take on more easily and get more people engaged? And then once you get the momentum rolling, then add and add and add and add and get to that mile eventually, but maybe not in the first day.
She said thank you in the comments. Those are for questions right now, but if you have some, we still have a few minutes left. Now, there was another question, more of a conflict resolution question, which I don't know if we can address offline as well. But if you do have any other questions, you have Caitlin's contact information there. We will be sending some information after the webinar as well to connect you with Action Coach. But any final words of wisdom, Caitlin, before we let people back into their offices?
Sure. Was there one more question there? Did you want to dive into it?
Sure. It was a conflict resolution question. I can pose it to you and you can let me know. But how do you address a matter where a male A player goes behind a female A player and asks her friend for a job offer without mentioning it to the female. Should that female A player be in trouble for confronting the male A player? But it,
Okay. Um,
yeah, kind of the dynamics that can happen, I guess, in a workforce. Yeah.
I think, as leader, again, if you're trying to create psychological safety, then there needs to be maybe some mediation. I don't like the idea of going straight to punishment or consequence or that kind of heavy-handed approach. It tends to shut people down, make them less likely to engage in the future. So again, I'm a coach, so it's maybe natural that I would say this, but I would tend to look towards coaching. So if you were to be guiding them through that process, it might be a question of like looking forward. What would you want them to do differently in the future? Right? What are your expectations going forward from here? Trying to keep it as positive as possible. Is it part of a pattern, or was it a one-time thing? If it is part of a pattern, then of course you'd want to address the pattern of behavior rather than each specific instance of it, which might not have the same impact.
Thank you. Great. Oh, we got another question coming in here from Kirsty. Our organization has changed a lot in the past year. We are having a lot of trouble getting the employees who were there before to, I guess, go with the changes on board.
Hmm.
Sorry, we're there before the changes on board. We have been working on this for the past year, but it seems little progress has been made. At this point, those people are holding us back. Expectations have been made clear. Any advice?
Yeah, definitely. And the advice might be to book that complimentary session. I put the link in the chat, so we could talk about it in a little bit more detail, if you don't mind. But
In general, yeah.
in general, if people, again, going back to that idea of making change, what's going on? Is there a level of dissatisfaction? Because the thing is, if people are not dissatisfied, if people are happy, content with the way things are, then it is harder to make change, to change the dynamic. But there are tools that you have as a leader that can help kind of increase the dissatisfaction or increase the friction to make it more difficult to exist within within the kind of the way things were. And there are things you can do to help make the vision of where you want to go more compelling, right? And maybe that's an open and honest conversation about where they want to go, right? What are their goals? What are their career ambitions? And how do they align with the changes that are coming down the pipe? It's also true that as a company grows, sometimes there are employees that don't grow with it. And it's tough because you feel loyal to them, right? They've been loyal to you. You want to be loyal to them. That doesn't mean that you don't hold them to the same high standard that you hold everybody out to. And sometimes a natural consequence of that is that they do choose to leave, or that that there's no longer a role for them with the organization as it is today. That's a difficult decision, not one to make lightly, but it certainly is something that we've seen happen with companies that are in a process of growth and change, right? The roles change, and sometimes the people in them must change as well.
Thank you. And Kirsty, I posted the complimentary session link as a response to your answer as well, since you were asking for that. So there you go too. It is also in our webinar chat. I'll just repost in case folks didn't see. Oh yeah, sorry. There it is. So now it's available for everyone to see there for all the participants. Now, Caitlin, you're back again July 4th with another webinar, How to Compete on Value, Not Price. Can you give us a little hint what we're talking about there?
A little teaser, sure.
Yeah.
So if you think back to the 6 steps to build a successful business that I shared right at the opener, today we were really talking about the level of team, right? We're actually going back down to the level of niche, of profitability. And there are, I would say you have 5 levers that you can really pull on as an owner or leader in a business to increase your profit. So if you're only marketing for new leads, if you don't have a reliable sales process, if you're not in touch with your current database, there are some instant things that we can do to help you build profitability. But the number one thing is knowing what sets you apart, knowing your unique sales proposition and why your customers should want to do business with you instead of anybody else who does the same thing that you do. And if we can get clear on that unique selling proposition on what makes you different, then all of the rest of the profit generating strategies can flow from there. And if you currently have people calling you up and the first thing they ask is, how much does it cost? And do you offer a discount? Then you definitely want to be there because we can help you work through those challenges.
Thank you. The first question asker asked for a little more information on your response, but I think given the time, it might be best to, reach out to Caitlin through email. Maybe we can. It does sound like that situation with the male and female employer can. There's a little more depth there that maybe takes a little longer to get into. So
Yeah, this sounds like perfect fodder for a complimentary coaching session.
yeah,
To
there
be
we go.
honest, it sounds like we need to get to a little more depth.
Excellent. Unless there's any other questions, and thank you everyone who posed them, I think we're going to let Caitlin go and get ready for that July 4th webinar. You can go to hrai.ca/events and sign up for that right now. We're taking registrations for that, as well as a bunch of other webinars coming up in June and July. So please make use of that. They're all free, just like that complimentary session with Caitlin. And you can find that link in the chat there. Caitlin, excellent information. Everyone needs to know how to manage this because it's getting increasingly harder to retain a team of A players. So I hope, and I know you've left a lot of people with some great insight.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been my pleasure.
All right. Well, until next time, thank you so much. And thank you everyone who joined us. You can watch this on HRAI's YouTube page. Please feel free to comment, share, and engage. Until next time. Thank you so much.
All right. Do you want to chat after the recording or?
Yeah, you know what? I will give you a call.
Okay. All right.
All right. Cheers.